Okay.
Welcome to Breaking the Standard, where we are closing the communication and knowledge gap for the small business government contracting industry. I'm Aubrey Gainfort, and today we have very special guest with us, Laura Mills. Laura, welcome.
Thank you.
If you could just introduce yourself for our guests, that would be great.
Sure. So as Audrey mentioned, Laura Mills, I am the CEO of a women-owned small business called Beacon Point. We are relatively new. We just opened in April, and we focus on providing IT financial management services, in particular, two disciplines called technology business management and FinOps, although we really can do any kind of financial management that's focused on technology. Prior to starting my own business, I was in the federal government for 17 years, largely focused on budgeting. And in my most recent stint at the Department of Energy, I served as the director of IT portfolio management. And then moved over and did some time as a GovCon and working on FinOps. And that's how I got to where I am today and speaking with you.
Well, congratulations, because when I first met with you, you were like a month in. So now we're almost to the 3-month mark, but that's really, really exciting. So uh, welcome to the other side of the coin, I guess. And it's perfect because today we're going to be talking about IT financial management and the differences for small business to consider. So, first of all, I'm a novice when it comes to financial management. And you were talking to me about this the other day. Can you explain what the different parts are? I know you talked about FinOps, and you were explaining to me the other day that there's FinOps and TBM. So,
Right.
what is FinOps and what is TBM?
So I would say both are disciplines within this larger umbrella of technology financial management. And I'm saying technology because we really are finding that it's going beyond just IT. There's a lot of interest in using similar capabilities. When you look at things, like IT, cloud, operational technology, AI, machine learning capabilities. So I've come to use the term technology now to be a more universal, encompassing term. But essentially, technology financial management is very similar to traditional financial management, but of course, focused on those special considerations that come into play when you are dealing with the wild and crazy world of technology. Anybody who is in this space appreciates that it is constantly changing, and the dynamics associated to the way you invest in technology have to go along with that. And so that, in particular, that's why there's this discipline called technology financial management, because it does require some special attention. The two disciplines that I'm most familiar with and really are dominant in the space are something called technology business management, or TBM, and then FinOps. And so I'm going to just go over both of those real quick, if that's okay with you, Audrey.
Yes, please.
So I'd say, there's a lot of conversation about how they're intersecting, and there are some intersections that I'll touch upon, but they really are quite different. So TPM is a more holistic look at your technology spend. It's a total cost of ownership approach. Like FinOps, it is driving value. At its core, it's saying, hey, are you getting value out of your technology spending? So those of us who have grown up in the let's say software development space, you can develop a product and it could be on time, it could be at or under budget, and it could be completely useless. So what TBM does is says, hey, is this technology spend driving value within your organization in reaching its business outcomes? And is it a wise technology investment? And it takes general ledger data most commonly, and parses it out into categories of IT spend that I think are more universally understandable, whether you're a technology professional or someone in finance or perhaps procurement. So it creates a common lexicon for us to talk about IT spend or technology spend more holistically. FinOps is very much focused on public cloud spending. And so FinOps, like TBM, is a value driver. And it's saying, kind of at its crux, how do we optimize our cloud spending, to get the most value out of it, and again, deliver business outcomes. So there are some similarities there in terms of the key drivers. I think there are some important differences. TBM is really a top-down perspective, and as I mentioned earlier, total cost of ownership. So we're looking at the whole universe of technology spend. It tends to be somewhat retroactive, and what I mean by that is you're looking at the spend after the fact. Perhaps you've got a cadence where you're ingesting data into whatever analytical tools you're using on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and then you're taking it and parsing that spend out along the TBM framework. FinOps is intended to be more real time, where you are looking at your cloud consumption data. A lot of folks use the cloud native tooling that's available, and you're monitoring it. So you can, if you need to make a pivot, you can do that in a quick manner to result in the least impact on your cloud consumption. And so any of us who have started using cloud can appreciate that one of the advantages is the scalability, right? There's really infinite amounts of resources available to you should you need them, but that can also result in some pretty pricey consumption going on and some high bills. And so it provides, this real-time monitoring to be able to more effectively get a handle on that spend before it really goes, wild and just blows through a budget. So, just in summary, I would say both are value drivers. One is more of a TCO top-down approach, and then the other is more is focused on cloud and is more granular in nature.
So you answered my one question that I was thinking about while you were talking about like the times for them. So the one's in real time, which is great because you can get some really probably very beneficial information to see how maybe you want to like pivot what you're doing. And then the other is either monthly or quarterly to look at like a bigger picture type of thing. So are they interdependent of each other? Like, can you have one without the other? Or do they both need to be together? Like, do you need to have one and the other, or can you function with one and then add the other one later?
They are not interdependent by any means. However, they are like peanut butter and jelly, and they are absolutely better together. And so what you can, often do is if you're starting from a TBM perspective, let's say, that's been the discipline that you've approached first. What cloud does, or looking at FinOps data, which is cloud consumption, what it does is provide you some of the most granular, easy to categorize data you have available to you as someone, as a technology financial management practitioner. If you've looked at general ledger data, if it's not coded really well, it's often very difficult to map that general ledger data to the TBM framework. So having the advantage of something like cloud and the billing data that accompanies it, which is much more granular and tends to be better categorized, is quite insightful to you as a technology financial management practitioner, because it allows you to get into the weeds, if you will, on how you are spending on cloud in this case. So I think that it certainly could benefit that as someone who's has been focused on TBM. Flipping the switch, I think if you're a FinOps practitioner, we often get caught up in we forget that there's more technology out there that also needs to have financial management. Like, we're so focused on cloud that TBM is going to give you that TCO, that total cost of ownership perspective. So you start to include things that are outside of your public cloud infrastructure as a service spending. You start to include things like licensing costs, labor costs. If there are any other cybersecurity costs that you need to tack onto it. So now you've got really a better snapshot, a more holistic understanding of what it takes to operate cloud in your organization. So they really are better together. However, it's not required that you do both.
Okay. So for small businesses that are either just starting out like you are, or have been around for a little while, but, have like a very, very small, staff, and they're looking at things that they could be investing in, as they, go further into the GovCon space. What would you recommend or suggest that they consider when they're looking for this type of IT financial technology? Like, because I think some of them just maybe aren't considering all of the options or like what they really need in the moment versus potentially what would help them down the line. And as you said, it can kind of end up being very costly. So, what would you suggest they consider first?
So I certainly would suggest that appreciate where technology fits into the enabling factors required to produce whatever you're producing. So if IT is like a big chunk of what's required for you to deliver a product, then you should be paying attention to how much you're spending on it immediately. It should be a top priority of yours. And I would argue that most organizations these days are absolutely using technology to enable them to deliver their products and services. You're hard pressed to find an organization that's not doing that. Now, of course, there's varying degrees of what that portion of spend is relative to your overall budget. But let's say you are one of those small businesses who does use technology quite extensively to deliver products or services. I would encourage you to start looking at something like a technology business management framework to categorize that spend so you can appreciate how you're spending on IT. And so, I think we get really caught up in thinking maybe a little bit too narrowly on what is involved with technology. We're thinking about our laptops, printers, cell phones, and there's really a lot more that should be bucketed into that technology spend. I mentioned to you like licensing, certainly if you're using SaaS products. If some of us are starting to dabble in cloud, there is a whole world of tooling available within the cloud service providers, managed services that can be quite appealing and helpful. And so, making sure that you're including those expenditures into your overall technology cost model is important. As you grow, those costs are going to grow. And you want to ensure that because you have an understanding on how you're spending on IT, you're able to align that with performance. Hey, because we invested in X technology, it resulted in, these improvements to the way we delivered our product or service. And you could appreciate the value of it. Otherwise, it's going to feel like a black hole. It's you're going to start spending money and you're just, you're not going to really appreciate what it's being used for. So I would encourage you, if you are one of those organizations that is heavily using technology as an enabling capability, to start categorizing that spend in a way that you can draw meaning and evaluate performance. I would say if you are heavily in the cloud or anticipate, having a lot of cloud presence, check out FinOps. It's just smart business practice. It is not only a discipline, but it's a cultural practice as well. And I would say TBM is also a cultural practice. They really both are. And what drives that cultural practice is collaboration and accountability. And so, in particular, that accountability piece is important on the FinOps cloud side. So you may have some really talented engineers spinning up all sorts of fantastic capabilities in the cloud. They're not overly concerned on the costs because, hey, they're not the finance people. They're the creatives. They're doing all sorts of fantastic capabilities. But it's important to make sure that they understand how much they're spending in the cloud and that they feel accountable for managing that effectively. I think if you're a small business, please appreciate, or frankly, any business, please appreciate that you are going to spend on technology. The key is to make sure that you're spending on that technology in an optimized way. So you're getting the most value out of that spend. I would like everybody to move away from this notion of cost savings when we talk about technology.
Mm.
It is really dangerous. Good on you if you actually find any. Okay, like good on you. You absolutely have found the pot of gold. But I just think it's a fool's errand to think about cost savings. Think about cost optimization. Think about value. If you're not getting value, that is something that you should remove from, what you're spending on.
I like that. And, it's really important, I think, to not just as a small business, but like starting out, but across the board. If you don't have a real track on what you're paying for and, where the most of your money is going, and if that's actually something that's being beneficial for you, you'd probably be draining money left and right and then not realizing that you're using something that you don't really need or it's not doing anything for you. And then you wonder why you're, not making any money and, you're bleeding money left and right. So that makes a lot of sense actually. It makes me think of like the restaurant analogy when, the restaurants, rescue people go and say, well, how much does your food cost? And they're like, I don't know. It's like you'd be able to use this technology to be able to say, I spend this much on technology, I'm using this much for this, I'm using this much from this. And, you're right, it's smart because then you can be able to use that when you go to potentially work on a new proposal and
Yes.
say, these are our costs and this
Yes.
is what it's made up of. And this is this is what we're using. And that way you can also like protect yourself to know that what you're proposing is going to be able to help you, stay afloat and, that you're doing okay, but then this will help to, sustain that and then propel you forward. So, I think that makes a ton of sense because I always wondered what it was beneficial for, considering I don't get to see it. Aside from when I learned about it when I was talking to you. So, and I do agree though, it's probably a good idea to use some form of it, regardless of where you are in your GovCon journey. And just it would probably be smarter to get in the practice of doing it now than going down the line and realizing why you're losing all this money and then,
Yeah, for sure. I love both disciplines. I think they're both, highly effective at increasing transparency and really creating a common level of understanding among, diverse groups of stakeholders and personas in your organization. But your point though about, hey, like getting a better handle on this is going to make sure that me as a business owner appreciate like, okay, what's going into these indirects? Is it really driving value? Because it is absolutely, much more important to understand how you're spending when you're a small business.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think that both of those disciplines, you don't have to eat the whole elephant. Take a peek at them, see if there's something that you can get started with. You don't have to do all things FinOps and all things TBM to still, get some benefit from adopting that type of cultural practice, that type of collaboration mentality where technology spending is not just for your IT shop. You're really needing to engage with finance, procurement, leadership. You're wanting to make sure that there are several people part of the conversation to ultimately end up with the best result. But I could talk about both disciplines, independently for hours.
Mhm.
So I'm going to
Mhm.
just leave it there.
Well, I have two questions that I ask everyone that comes on the show. So the first one is if there's any advice that you would give to the small business government contracting industry. So people like yourself that are just getting into the space or, people that are thinking about it and haven't made the leap yet, what would you say to them?
So I have found that my network has been unbelievably supportive and helpful. And so if I were to provide some advice, certainly if you're thinking about going into small business, make sure that you've really cultivated that network and talk to them about your plans, get them excited. for you. It's really remarkable the amount of support that that community will likely give to you, and it's going to be invaluable as you go down this journey. Because you'll have had conversations with different people, and they know what your challenges are. Perhaps, they know somebody who needs the services or products that you're offering. It really helps with growth, I think. And then I think it helps with, to be honest, keeping yourself as the business owner positive and optimistic.
Mhm.
And so my best advice is build that network, water it, feed it, let it flourish, because it's going to be invaluable to you on your small business journey.
I love that. And if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
So the best way to do that is you can certainly visit my website. I'm going to give you the web address. It's HTTPS :// B as in boy, CON, P as in Paul, T as in Tom.com. You can also reach me at laura.mills@bconpt.com.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure also to link Laura's information in the show notes as well as her LinkedIn profile. And, if you want to reach out to her, just let her know that you listened to the episode and, have questions for her, or if you want to ask about anything and everything related to financial technology, I'm sure that she'd be very happy and excited to help. And if there's something that we talked about today that you have questions about, or if there's a topic that I haven't covered on the show and you really want to hear about it, please shoot me an email at breakingthestandard@gmail.com, and make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, and newly on YouTube. Until next time, bye.